Hello everybody, my name is Ryan Kristin here with On One Software, and today we're going to be doing our webinar on street life photography. And there may be a few of you that participated in this webinar. It's actually one that we're repeating because we had some pretty bad technical issues that were plaguing us most of the webinar, and so what we decided to do is just go ahead and redo it for everyone so they could catch it a second time. And also, Brian Matish normally does these inspiration and stylization webinars with me, and unfortunately, he's not going to be able to make it today. He got pulled into something at the last minute that just he couldn't get out of, and so it will be just me here, Ryan Kristin, but I'm really excited here to go over this with you guys and take your questions. And it's a real fun topic. Again, it's street life photography, very much living, breathing topic. And so what we'll do here is let me just make a brief introduction that we do for a lot of our webinars here. So these are some things that you know if you're somebody that's new to our webinar series. What happens is we record these and then we will place them on the website so you can view them about 4 to 5 days later. It takes us a little while to compile them and get everything organized, but they will be there on our university section of the website, which is just that ononesoftware.com/university. And if you do have questions, there's a questions module on your GoToWebinar control panel. And since it is just me today, I'll try to get through as many of those as I can. But go ahead and use those. Again, something comes up, you want clarification, or you're just curious about something. And actually, if a few of you on that note wouldn't mind just letting me know that you're able to see this screen, which again should just be a couple notes here on regarding the webinar, as well as you're able to hear the audio. Again, we had the issue last time, so I just want to make sure that we are not going through and starting this with some bad audio. So it looks like everything is great. Nobody's got any issues, so that's perfect. Thank you all so much. Looks like we got people from all over here, so that's exciting. And if you do have audio-visual issues, go ahead and give it just a little time. Sometimes there's the bugs that just need to work out either with your computer or your connection, so just giving it a few seconds to let that happen is usually a good thing. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into this webinar here. Now, what I've done is I'm starting here in Lightroom, and I'm using that really just as a source to sort my photos here. We're using the new Lightroom 4, which, of course, the suite is compatible with. And I love Lightroom. It's a great way to catalog your images and just keep everything organized. And it's a great partner and companion to the suite as well. And you'll see that as we go through here. So with our topic here on street life photography, I've got a couple images that I compiled, and a lot of this is some of the street life that I've shot while I've been doing some of my travels abroad. So the first one that I'm going to grab here is this gentleman here with the accordion. And so when you want to get into our suite, no matter what the product is, what you're going to do is come up here to File, plug in Extras, and then you're going to drop down to our Perfect Photo Suite. And what that's going to do is it'll launch you straight into the suite, and it actually starts you off inside of Perfect Layers. And then from Perfect Layers, you can choose which module that you want to go into. Today, most of the time, since this is heavy on stylization, that's really the theme of these webinars, we're going to be spending a lot of our time inside of Perfect Effects. So we'll go ahead and click on the effects there and load that up. And what you'll notice too, as we're working here, you get a live preview, which is really cool for all the different effects here, and you see them in thumbnails at the bottom of the screen. And you also, if you sit there, you get a hover preview. I'm not able to keep my mouse still enough. I'm using a Wacom tablet, by the way, so if you hear some drawing and some pen noises in the background, that's what I'm using it with. But again, it's really nice to be able to preview whatever that effect is that you're trying to do before you apply it, and then as you see, you can hover, get a preview, and a little description of what it is that you're looking at. So let's jump in here and start doing some of our stylization. One of the first things that I do to my photos, and really this is pretty universal, is I usually am going to add a tone enhancer. And so what we can do is using the Advanced tab over here, we can use this drop down. You're actually able to create your own effects from scratch. So this is one of the really cool, really fun things that you can do here with Perfect Effects. So I'll jump in here, and I'm going to choose Tone Enhancer, and it brings up all these options of whatever it is that I want to choose, from brightness and contrast, black, shadows, those kinds of things. So by default, I have some local contrast on there, and you can see as I bring that down to 0 and start to bring it up, we get a nice little bump in there. So I'm going to have the local contrast increased, and I'm also going to use some clarity here, because what I want to do is bring out some of the detail in this shot here. So I'm going to bring this up here just a little bit on the clarity slider, and we'll start to bring out some of the detail here on the overall image. And we don't want to completely overdo it, because we're actually, what I want to do when I look at this shot is I've got really this gentleman here. And the story behind this is it's kind of funny. This is in Rome, taken in Rome, and I was with a few friends, and we had just gotten into Rome, and we had gotten our first scoops of gelato. So we'd never had that before, and we're sitting there just enjoying gelato, and all of a sudden this guy walks by, and you can tell he's a street performer, and he's done for the day. It's 5 o'clock. He's going home. And my friend I was with, who's also a photographer, we just look at each other, drop the gelato, grab our cameras, and then I come running down the street behind this guy, far enough to wait so I don't spook him or anything. I didn't want to, make him sound like somebody was running up on him. And then I just, dropped to my knee and started firing off shots. And this is the one that I got that I really liked. Excuse me. And I feel like it really embodies what I was going for. Again, he's headed home, he's relaxing, he's lit a cigarette, and he's going home for the evening. And so, and again, that's one of the great things about street life photography is trying to capture the emotion and the feeling. And it's sometimes one of the hardest things to communicate through your photos, and especially when you get back home and you're trying to describe to people that this is how it smelled, this is what people did, and this was kind of how the culture was. So when you can bring as much of that into the photo as possible, that's really what you're trying to drive home. So what I want to do is I really want to bring out some of the detail in this accordion to really kind of make it pop. And then this guy that has it on his back is actually kind of coming to the background here. So he's still obviously involved in the shot, but really I want the accordion to catch the eye. So going back into this, we'll start off with our tone enhancer. And then what I want to do next is I want to warm up the scene a little bit, because it was evening, and I want to kind of add some of that feel to the shot. So what I do is I hit add, and it gives me another empty layer here. And then what I can do is I can come over, and I'm going to choose the landscape category, and I'm going to use golden hour enhancer. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and you can see it really warms up the whole scene. And what I always tend to do is I grab my strength slider after I apply the effect, and I bring it down to 0, because sometimes it's easy to get swayed by what the effect is doing. So really what I want to do is take it at 0 and then start increasing it to see where it is that I like it. And for me, it's really kind of right there at half. I don't really need to go much further. And I would like it maybe a little bit more on the accordion, because we have some of these tones, and you can see right there, I love that you can see where he's playing most of his keys and for the songs that he's playing. But so some of that grit and grime will kind of warm that up a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another layer, and I'm just going to add the golden hour enhancer right on top again. So I'll bring this down to 0, and then I'm going to slowly increase it. And what I'm looking at is I'm looking at really the keys of the accordion here and this area over here, and specifically just the accordion to see the colors that I want. And then what we're able to do is we can actually mask, and we can either paint out or paint in the effect that we're trying to go for. So with this, what I'm going to do is click invert. Now when I do that, what it does is it flips it around, so now none of the effect is being seen. And then we have our painting mode set to paint in, so then that allows me to come here with my brush or your mouse or whatever you're using, and I can just start to brush this right in. So we'll just kind of, again, get some of that golden color here on the accordion, warm it up, and it kind of gives it, it adds to that grunginess that we have there. And then I can come back, and I can also hit Command M if you're on a Mac, or Control M if you're on a PC, and that shows your mask, so you can see if you're missing any areas. And this really doesn't need to be too perfect here. We can just kind of get general. A lot of times when you're adding an effect and it's pretty low, you don't waste your time getting that mask perfect if you don't have to. If it's something that's really cranked up and there's a big difference between what is masked and what isn't, then you maybe want to take the time to make sure that you've got it right. But for something like this, we really don't need to worry too much about that. So again, I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to bump up that just a little bit more. So now we have that nice golden color there on the accordion. Now what I want to do is I want to start adding some texture to really help separate this, because the eye follows things that are in focus, and really the things that are sharp and textured. That's what your eye is going to hit first. Aside from the rule of thirds and some of those other things out there. Another thing is when you have something that's lighter as opposed to darker, those lighter objects are going to catch the eye first. So whatever you want to have first and foremost, and you want people to see and really highlight in the photo, you're either going to make it a little lighter or you're going to add some more detail to it and get some contrast. So those are kind of two things that I might not be doing too much of the lighter, but I will add some more texture here. So I'm going to add another empty layer here. And I'm going to go over to my detail. And I'm going to use, now we've got a couple good options here. Amazing Detail is a good one. And then I can also use the texture booster. And I think I'm going to use that texture booster. And what's kind of fun about this effect is it gives you almost a kind of a pseudo HDR look. And in fact, I could go off entirely in this direction using this, it's kind of a fun look to go and use. But what I'm going to do is bring it back down, and I'll use this one in moderation. So I'll start to increase it here a little bit. Again, getting that accordion the way that I want. And then what I can do is I could mask it out again, or I can come over here to our golden hour enhancer. You can see the mask that we made, and I can actually take advantage of that and go up here to masking and click copy mask. And then I can actually just paste that mask onto my texture booster, so I don't need to redo the work that I've already done. So then I'll hit paste mask, and then you can see it's really just right there on the accordion. What I also want to do is I want to cool down the rest of the scene just a little bit. I know I warmed it up earlier, but I want to add just a little bit of a cool tone to it. So what I'll do is I'll go over and I'm going to grab my photo filters, and you can see this 80A cooling. You can also use blue that's over here. In fact, I kind of like that a little bit better. So that's what I'll do is I'll grab that blue, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste that same mask that we already used. So I'm going to come over here, paste mask, because it's already copied, and now it's just hitting that accordion. So what I can do is I can just flip that around. So now I hit invert, and now I'm getting that blue tone on the rest of the photo. And what I'm also doing here to separate that accordion is you can see I'm warming it up by adding the golden enhancer, so it has warm tones. And then for the rest of the photo, I'm cooling it down using this blue. And so with the contrasting colors, it also is going to make that accordion pop more. And that blue is a little too intense for me, so again, I drop that down to 0. And then we'll just start to creep that up just a little bit. I don't want it to completely overpower things, but right there you can see it really makes that accordion pop. Now what I'll do another thing here with some of my my color and tone. So let me grab the darker here. So I'm going to add another layer, and what I'm going to do is choose darker. So it's just right over here. Click on that, and you can see what that's doing. It really kind of darkens things down. And again, I'm going to paste that mask because I want to just kind of do that right there on the accordion. I like how it kind of brings out, again, a little more of that grit and grime. So what I'm going to do is paste that mask, and then I'm going to bring that back, and then just bring it in just a little bit. So it kind of enriches it a little bit and kind of brings out some of that color and a little more of that texture. And then to finish this off, what I'll do is I'm going to add a vignette. So I'm going to come over here to my vignettes, and a lot of really fantastic vignettes. And of course, you can create your own from the drop down if you wanted to. I'll just choose something like this big softy here, and I'll dial that back, and then just kind of bring it in just a little bit. Now, what's kind of just interesting about post-process in general is you tend to start getting lost in your image, which is great, and you kind of forget what the original looked like. There's a great little shortcut using Perfect Effects, and if you use Command P or Control P, so Command P if you're on a Mac, Control P if you're on a PC, and you can see before, and then you can see the after. So before, we have a pretty flat looking image. And you know, it's not that fantastic. But after, we really kind of created some pop to this. And it's really pretty interesting. So then what we can do is we can go ahead, hit apply if we want to, and then what it does is it actually takes all those layers and it compounds it down into one new non-destructive layer. So then you come back into perfect layers and you really just have a copy of the original layer that you went in with. And it's also saving it in PSD file format. So what that does is you can come over here and now you have, again, your original layer and your new layer. And if I want to, I just hit save and it saves it right back into Lightroom for me. I want to show you the kind of the full start to finish with how this works. So now we can close out of the Perfect Photo Suite and now you can see that new image here just popped in to Lightroom 4. And so then we have the nice updated image there. Let me see. Let me try to go out, answer a few questions here if we've got any. Somebody asked if others are having audio problems. No, I think we've got that all figured out. That shouldn't be an issue. And there's a question here that I don't know if I fully understand. It's talking about removing somebody on a specific scene. Regardless, if you're doing some removal where you're trying to do more of a sky and you're trying to drop in new skies or new contents like that or new backgrounds, then what I do is I switch on over into Mask Pro when I'm moving entire things over. When I'm really just kind of adding and blending things together and kind of playing with contrast and effects, then I just use the masking brush inside of the Perfect Effects. So I hope that answers your question with that. And yes, if you're inside of Photoshop, you just launch this as a plugin, and then it'll take you right back into Photoshop. So it's the same sequence, and the suite's the same once you get in it. It's really just where you start. And again, if there's something that you missed, something that you want to see again, we'll have this up on the internet for free for you, so you can check that out again. But I want to keep moving so we can get through these images here. So I've got another image here, and let's send this over into our suite. So we'll go Plugin Extras, Perfect Photo Suite. This was also taken in Rome, and it was a fun scene. I was walking over a bridge and just happened to look over, and you've got this gentleman that was fishing in the river. And beautiful light here. It's really starting to warm up as far as the light tone goes. And I just really like the way that the rod is positioned. It acts as a leading line. Not only do I have this leading line going through here, which is along that canal wall, but also, you know, again, we have the rod and he's kind of pointing into the rest of the scene. Also notice his head and his eyes. He's not looking directly at me and he's got the rod out here. He's looking in the same direction. So what it does is, you know, when you look at him, all of a sudden, you know, he's casting out and you just subconsciously look out into the rest of the scene with him. So it kind of gets your eye, goes to him, and then it starts exploring out here. Now what I want to do here is I want to crop this in here a little bit. So what I'm going to do is grab the crop tool. We're inside of Perfect Layers here. And again, I'll grab that and we'll set that out. And then we'll adjust this as needed. We just have a little too much excess space, I think, going on. So we'll just do something like that right there. So we'll hit apply. And so this really now is filling the image with what I want. And what I also want to do is I just want to kind of tilt this here just a little bit as well. And then I'll go ahead and apply that. So I'll actually come back in here and just crop that. I should have done that first, but that's okay. We can just come right in here, crop this down just a little bit, and we'll just shave off those edges that are sticking out. So now we come in here, and what we can do is jump into our effects. Somebody asked, why do I use Tone Enhancer? Why didn't I use Lightroom to do some of those, when you're doing clarity and those kinds of things? And that's a great question. You can do it in Lightroom. If you want to do some of those things back in Lightroom, that's fine. So you can save it back, and that's the beauty of it. It's up to you, because everyone's got a little bit different workflow. So whether you want to stay entirely in the suite or you want to kind of mix and match, use a little Photoshop, a little Lightroom, that is just fine. It's really whatever works best for you and your workflow. Okay, so we masked out some of that negative space. What I want to do is I want to add a glow. I want to soften some of this up a little bit. And a really great glow that we have. In fact, there's a lot of them. I've been exploring more and more of these while I've been processing some of my images. And, each one kind of adds a different thing. But I'm going to go with Deep Forest here. And what this effect does so well is it really kind of deepens everything. And I feel like it really just adds a little bit of that ethereal feel, but it just draws you into the image. It's just got a great way of doing that. So again, we'll take that down to 0. And then I'm going to bring this up just a little bit. So I'm not going to just go crazy with it. I'm kind of using just a little subtleness to that. It's kind of like if you cook a lot. Just a little pinch of salt. Your seasonings. You don't dump the whole bottle in there. You're just going to kind of put a pinch of this, a pinch of that, and that's really what I think one of the great benefits of Perfect Effects is you can just mix and match so quickly and so easily with it. So what I want to do next is I also want to pump up the greens here. So I'm going to add another effect here. And we're going to go over to our photo filters and we'll find our green enhancer. So I'm going to go right over here. And what this is doing is this is just grabbing those green tones. So you can see the reflection on the water and the trees. And when it comes in, you can definitely tell it comes in at full strength. There's no doubt about that. So this is looking a little radioactive to me. So let's turn it down just a bit. So again, start at 0 and then kind of just start to build it and just kind of punch it up a little bit. One of the things you can also do that's really cool is you can adjust the hue of your green. So it's a little too bright for me. So what I'm going to do is kind of bring it down to match more of that golden sunset color. So you can still boost your greens and it doesn't have to be, for example, when I go to the far right, this is a really bright green. This is probably more of a green you'd want to use in like a forest scene where it's really kind of shady and maybe there's some water. It's just a little too bright for this. So again, we'll just kind of drop that down just a little bit. And that allows me actually to pump this up just a little bit more. So I really like the way that looks. So what we'll do is we'll add another here. And what I'm also going to do is I want to add a glow. And what I'm going to do for this one isn't so much to kind of pump up the photo as it is to put some softness on the water here. So I'll go back to my glow category and I'm going to go right over to Dreamland. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that right there. And one of the easiest ways, if I don't want to have this on the rest of the scene up here, is to grab our masking bug. So with that selected, you really just click anywhere in the photograph, and then you can just spread that out wherever you want it. So I'm going to use this straight line that I've got here on the canal, kind of follow that as my cue. So let me just kind of get that approximate. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm going to bring that back just a little bit. And again, now you can see from 0, and then you start to build it right on up. And what I also want to do here, I'm going to come back here to the deep forest. And I want to mask off that effect on our gentleman here. So I'm going to reduce that down just a little bit and just kind of mask that off real quick. And what we'll do is we'll turn all those back on. For me, I usually don't like my people or my, if this was the main focal point of the image, whatever that is, I usually don't like it to be soft. So we just kind of brush it off, and you can see it's so subtle, you can be pretty sloppy with your masking there. What I also want to do here is I want to add just a little bit more warmth to the scene. And instead of just going straight to my golden hour enhancer, I'm going to actually add a filter here. So we're going to click on Photo Filter. And then what I can do is I can grab one of the presets here. And if you notice, you can actually hover over each one of these and you get a preview of what it's going to look like. So what I want to do is I want to grab, didn't mean to grab orange, wanted to grab didn't mean to grab green, I wanted to grab the orange there. So I take that orange, and again, comes in a little too strong, so let's just bring it back down to 0, and then just bring it up from there. So now it just adds a little bit of warmth there to the scene. And what I'm going to do for this last one is I'm going to create essentially a custom vignette. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add one more effect here, and I'm going to go to my tone enhancer, and I'm going to bring my local contrast down to 0, my blacks down to 0, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my brightness and I'm going to drop my brightness. And then what I want to do is I want to create a vignette around this area so that your eye, again, the lighter part of the photo is going to be drawn to this gentleman here. So let's grab our brush, and I'm going to take my brush opacity and just drop this down. And then what we can do is get a really nice big brush going on here, and then just kind of softly paint out what we want in that area. So you can see we kind of just, I've got a really light opacity, so I just kind of keep brushing out until I get what I want. And I start from the inside out, so I kind of get exactly what I want, and then go a little bit bigger, and then kind of bigger circles till you have everything it is right in there. And then you can play with this brightness slider, so we can crank it up to do whatever we want. So let's kind of bring this down again like we had it. And I just wanted to kind of see if we should go a little lighter, a little darker. And that right there I think looks really good. Maybe I'll bring that up just a little bit more. Now if I want to save this as a preset, what I can do is I can come over here, preset, save preset, and call it whatever I want. Or again, we come back through here, and I'm going to do that again so people can see how you save this all back. And again, it doesn't matter if you're coming from Photoshop or from Lightroom. You hit your apply, and what we can also do is get our before and after here. So now we're back inside of layers, and we have, we'll turn on our bottom layer there. We have our original, which is, it's always funny when you go back to the original. It's pretty stark contrast there. You have your after. So a pretty flat image, and then we really boosted everything out to get that nice image there. And then of course you hit save. It takes that PSD, saves it, and it's already waiting for us back inside of Lightroom right there. So let me see here if I can jump on, answer a few questions here. So somebody asked, can you go back and edit a previous layer after hitting the Add New Layer button? Absolutely. So while you're inside of Perfect Layers, and I actually did that with our Dreamland effect, or whatever the first glow was that we added, I think it was Dreamland, then I didn't want that on the person. I'd already added 2 or 3 more effects on top. So you just click on that effect that you want to adjust, and then you can go back and play with it, whether it's the strength or you want to do a mask or whatever. Now once you hit apply to save it into Perfect Layers, that's when it commits everything, and then it saves it back as a new non-destructive layer inside of Perfect Layers. So so hopefully that answers your question. But yeah, it's great. It's pretty. You're able to kind of fly around and just kind of change things on the fly as your as your tastes are changing and as you're kind of figuring out what you're doing with the photo. So a good question regarding Lightroom. They're saying, does it kind of make a copy of the original, or does it, how does it work? So if you had a RAW file or a JPEG or anything inside of Lightroom other than a PSD, it creates a PSD copy and then uses the copy. If you are using a PSD file, you can actually set it up in your preferences to either make a copy of that PSD or to not. And it's pretty simple. You just, some people like to, and I choose to not make a copy, but that's usually because when I have a PSD that I'm working with, it means I'm editing that file. And that's just my personal workflow. I leave everything in RAW when I just kind of don't want to deal with it. And then as soon as I want to edit it, I transfer it over, convert it over to a PSD, and then I play with it from there. But let's, I'll try to get to a few more questions here. Hopefully at the end we'll have a little bit of time. But let's keep going here. Now, again, this is a street life photography. So this is a perfect example of how a story unfolds in front of you. So if I go back here, we started off here. Again, I was on top of the bridge. And then we got to thinking, I was with the same friends there, and one of my friends was a photographer. He's like, well, let's just head on down this way and kind of just check it out. We were just wandering anyway. And that's some of the most fun about travel, whether it's in your own city or whether you're on the other side of the globe, just kind of getting lost and just kind of letting yourself be taken by whatever's interesting and whatever you think is fun. So we, again, ended up walking down the steps, got on that, and then I shot this image here. And so this is the image that we're going to start working with. So as you can see, we've got this little tent, and this is the same person. We just, by the time we had gotten down there, he had, he's sitting in his shaded area there with the tent, and he just has rods out, and it was a great photo opportunity. And I'll credit my buddy, Jordan Andre. He saw it first. And so, I was off shooting some other things, and I look over, and I was like, oh, man, that's too good to miss. So as soon as he was done, of course, I hopped over there, and I was like, I got to get a couple of my own shots of that too. So let's, let me see here. Let's go back over onto our suite. So we'll go here, File. Oops. File, Plugin Extras. Perfect Photo Suite. There we go. Oh, it's asking if I want to add another layer, and we don't need to have a duplicate there. So what we'll do is go like that. Okay, so I'm going to go straight into effects here. And this shot has a lot of detail in it. It's kind of similar to the accordion shot that we were playing with earlier. It really, you can see we've got the pavement, we've got rods, we've got boots, a lot of fun stuff to play with here. So what I want to start off with is a version of the tone enhancer, which is the amazing detail. So I'm going to go over here to our detail, and I'm going to click on that amazing detail right there. And then everything, boom, it pops. It's almost like a light goes off. And then everything's strong, everything's crisp and clean. And I just love that effect. So I'm going to start that back down at 0. And maybe we'll go full strength, but we'll see. So let's kind of crank that up. I think that looks good. It's just a little shy of 100% there. We'll just do 80. Now what I also want to do is I want to add a tone enhancer, because that's going to be doing a different thing. So I'll add tone enhancer, and you can see it just adds more local contrast. Whereas before, we were really just trying to get our sharpness in there. And when we add the tone enhancer, then it darkens things down, and we're starting to get a little bit more contrast in there. I'm going to add another effect, and when I have colorful subjects like the rod here, one of the effects I really like to use is called Havana. So it's in the movie looks category. So I'm going to come right over here to Havana, click on that one, and then you can see it's really pretty bright, comes in pretty extreme. So let's see where we want to use that. So again, bring it down to 0, start to increase that, and really about half is pretty good there. And so you can see we start to punch the colors up, and it's adding just a little bit of diffusion, so it's softening the image just a little bit. And because it's starting to feel just a little heavy for me, and so what I want to do is I'm going to go over to my color and tone category, and I want to lighten the shadows. So I'll use this effect called lighten shadows here, and you can see what that does. 0 and then 100. So it just kind of brings back a little bit more of that shadow detail, so that it doesn't quite feel so heavy. And so, because when you start doing too much contrast and you keep piling too many effects that have high clarity, high contrast, it just kind of gets dark. And sometimes that's good if that's the mood you're going for. But for here, I want to keep it a little lighter, a little more vibrant. So again, we'll kind of will bring some of that shadow detail back. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to finish this off with a vignette. So we can come over here to our vignettes here, and I'll choose a different one than I did before. Let's go over and choose subtle vignette. And this is just a one that I find myself using, most of the time. It's a great one to start off with, and of course, using this advanced tab, you can come over here and you can change your brightness and adjust it however you want. But I find that this one is it's a very good one to kind of start off with, pretty neutral, and then go from there as far as playing with it with the feather and the brightness and the midpoint and all those things. So the fun part here is going to be the before and after. So we have our before, and then we have our after. So you can see what it did is we now have the first thing your eye pops to is the color there in the rods. So we have the before, and you kind of wander around a little bit, but as soon as you bump up those colors, again, that Havana did that, and it gave that green to the tent. It really kind of gave this thing a personality and a life to its own. Whenever you have pastel colors or bright colors, Havana is one of those just to keep in the back of your mind to at least try, because it's so easy to just try all these effects in here because you just click, click, click and play around. So I want to make sure that we have time for the last image and also that we can get to a few questions. I might be able to take just a few here, so let's see. Somebody asked, great question, is the crop destructive or non-destructive inside of Perfect Layers? The crop is destructive, and what the person means by that is it's going to, whereas in Lightroom, if you crop, you can always go back and adjust it, and it kind of snaps back to the original photo size if you want it to. But in Perfect Layers, once you crop, that's the size that you're going to go forward with. So if you're somebody that is kind of worried about that's not exactly how you want to crop something, and you're somebody that's using Lightroom, go ahead and crop in Lightroom. What I would recommend if you do that step, do all your effects, do everything you want to, and crop as your very last thing if you're doing it in that workflow, because then it allows you to change that up and adjust it however you want. Because a lot of times when I edit, sometimes I'll come back the day after and I look at the photos that I edited, and sometimes I'm like, I wish I would have cropped that a little differently, or that's a little too hot, whatever it is, and you fine-tune your image. So if you're somebody that likes to do that, then Lightroom's a great way to be cropping as well. But I think it's very handy inside of Layers to be able to crop not only your image, but if you have multiple layers, you can actually just crop specific layers and cut them. So that's a really, really nice feature that you've got. All right, let's head back into our Lightroom. Don't need to save this. All right, now this is going to be the last image that we'll do here, and then we'll jump off into some questions. And again, I'll try to get through as many as I can. If for some reason I don't get to your question, feel free to shoot us an email, give us a phone call. Our number's on the website. We're happy to talk to you, and of course help if anything comes up. Because we want your software working, we want your questions to be answered, but also check out the university. There's so much knowledge there, and we also have Perfect Inspiration, which if you haven't checked that out, it's the Inspiration tab on the website. Just amazing. Brian Matisse does a different thing every week, and I get excited for Fridays, which he's dropping a new one tomorrow. So every Friday, he drops a new image, new story. He gives you the full preset. That's pretty cool. He essentially gives you the recipe for what he did to create his images. And so that's free. And then, of course, there's a video that can be 15, 20, 30 minutes long. So really cool stuff. Again, it's something that all of us enjoy in-house, probably as much as you guys do out there. And so it's something that we're really excited about. Okay, so let's jump into effects here. Now, I guess I'll explain this shot a little bit. I wish I had my full Lightroom catalog here to show you just all the images surrounding this. Because it was a funny sequence. It's typical street life. This is in India. and it was in actually what's known as an opportunity slum. We were there. I was there with some other people, looking at different ways to help this organization to help people in the slum, getting facilities for medical supplies and things like that. But anyway, we were walking through, and this is actually me turning around looking back at this girl, because I had walked down the street, and she's just playing in a bucket full of water. It was bath time for her. And so she's smiling and laughing and having a great time. And the mom was there, and she could see that, sometimes you have to watch out when you are out there shooting travel photography, whether it's a child like this or just anybody in general. When you point a big lens at somebody, I was using a 70-300 with this, sometimes it can be intimidating. But once you kind of break that barrier, either you introduce yourself, you kind of say hello, which we'd already done with the mom, then they know it's not really a threat, whether it's for the child or even for them. So that's a good thing to do, rather than just going out there and blasting photos of people, and you can really upset people doing that. So always try to get somewhat of a permission, whether it's nonverbal, if you don't speak the language or whatever that is. But again, I'm walking down the street, she's playing, and I got some shots, and I was like, oh, they're pretty good. And then I turn around, and again, the sun's getting low, it's great light, and then she just looks at me, and I grabbed the camera, and I shot this, and it's one of my favorite images I took on my whole trip. She's a cute girl, and it's just, there's something about photographing people and just the emotion that you can get out of that. And on that note, another thing here that I want to reference is catch light. Catch light is something that many of you might be familiar with, but it's this light that you can see in the eyes. And we're really going to play that up a little bit here when we start doing our editing. But with catch light, with that little sparkle, which you can see it's the sky, and the way that you get that is when somebody is in a darker area than what their eyes are looking at. So if somebody was inside of a doorway, or right here, her eyes happen to be shaded just by her hair, and so that it's picking up that sky reflection in her eye. And what it really does for a photograph is it's huge, because eyes that have catch light, there's a lot of life to them, and it seems vibrant. It seems like it's alive. And eyes that don't have catch light, they kind of have this dead look and dead feeling to them, and therefore it kind of goes into the rest of the photograph. And it's really amazing. Go through and look at your photos. Photos that have catch light, they just kind of draw your attention in. There's life to them. Without it, there's not. And so if you don't have catch light in there, just create it. So whether you want to grab one of our effects that's adding more, something that's lighter, or you want to just add a color fill layer that's white, drop the opacity and just, draw it in there to give some catch light, it makes a really big difference. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of take that quick moment to talk about catch light, because sometimes you don't have great examples to show that, and I think this is a perfect one. All right, so let's go ahead and on that discussion of the eyes, I'm going to add a tone enhancer. So it starts to give me a little snap there for the photo. And what I want to do is I'm going to keep my local contrast there. I'm also going to boost my clarity. And pay attention specifically to the eyes. Don't worry about everything else right now, because what I'm going to do is paint this right in on the eyes. I'm going to bring the blacks back, actually. And then what I want to do is take the brightness, and we will increase that as well. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my brush, I'm going to click invert here, and then I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to kind of brush that right inside the eyes there. Just like that. So now her eyes have really lit up here. I might drop that down just a little bit there. And you can see why I didn't have the blacks. I want to turn that back up. It starts to get that dead feeling when you have that really dark color in there. And so I brought all that back, and so that then we just have those nice, beautiful eyes. So I'm going to bump up the clarity, which is as well as the local contrast, and we're really kind of make these eyes pop here a little bit. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit add. We'll get some more things going on here. Now, another one of my favorite effects that we have in here is we've got Blue Dawn Leonidas here. So I'm going to go ahead, click on Blue Dawn there, and it really starts to cool the photo down. Gives it a totally new look and feel. So let's bring that back down to 0. And then I'm going to slowly start to punch that up. And so what it's done is it's started to desaturate some of the colors and cool it down. And it really is kind of giving just a really, I think, nice effect to the photo. And then we also have an effect that I want to add on top of this inside of Movie Looks. It's called Fashion Passion. So this is going to give me some more green tone to the image there. So we're going to bring this down to 0 and then just bring that up just a little bit there as well. So you can see some of the greens here in the background start to pop, and it really starts, you're playing with the colors here. You've cooled it down, and then you've also given it a green tint. And you can see why these are called movie looks. You almost feel like this is a scene out of a movie with just the shades and the hues and everything that it's working with. And then what I'm also going to do is I'm going to use Hollywood Intensity here. So I'm going to come over here, click on Hollywood Intensity, give it just a little bit of a glow, just like so. So you can see it, especially there on her face, it really starts to brighten it up and give it a nice little glow there. And I might even come back. So this is, again, going back to when you want to adjust things to my first layer, my tone enhancer, and I might just bring up the brightness just a little bit more there on the eyes, because some of the effects that we're doing are darkening those down. So what I can do is I can just click on this top layer, Hollywood Intensity, and then all of them turn right back on. So it makes it very easy to do that. Let's add just a couple more things here. I'm going to come over here and go to Color and Tone. I'm going to choose the lighter one here. And I'm just going to kind of brighten this up just a little bit. And I wanted to do it without getting any glow or anything like that in there. So I just wanted to kind of increase some of the light here that's on her face, and then it starts to blow everything else out in the background as well. So just a little bit of that. And if we wanted to, let's see if this will be too far. But let's add another lighter layer. So let's come over here, and then let's take this, let's invert it, and then just paint it right there inside the eyes. And again, it's in at full strength, so then what we'll do is we'll bring it all the way down to 0, and then maybe just give it just a little bit of a boost. And that might be a little too much. I think we got it enough with our tone enhancer. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that. So there you go. We've created this very unique look here. And again, I'm going to do my before after using Command P, Control P. Look at the eyes. Because even in the original, it didn't look like the eyes were too faded, but we really punched those up. And you can see we have some really nice white there in the eyes. And that catch light really just makes it all come together.